every single one of those 7 games. 1.6 million, 1.34 million, 1.26 million, you guys can see. And they're playing here against the Chicago Sky, against the Mercury, against the Lynx, against the Aces, against the Dream, and against the Mystics. It doesn't truly matter who the Indiana Fever is going up against. They're going to get viewership and they're going to get attendance.
The WNBA, it's not the league you thought you knew. Suddenly records are falling, arenas are packed, and the entire conversation has shifted. But it's not just about basketball. This is about a power struggle, a perceived snub, and one player who exposed the truth about who really holds the cards, and what happens when you bet against the future. Before we dive into the explosive truth, are you Team CC all the way? Drop that in the comments right now and let's see where everyone stands. Get ready because the real story is far more dramatic than the headlines.
Tickets for this game actually sold out within the hour when it was announced, and people were lining up for over 3 hours before the game just to get into this arena.
Remember the drama surrounding the last Olympic team selection? A seemingly elite committee, handpicked to represent the best of USA basketball, made a decision that left everyone scratching their heads. They left off the biggest draw in the game, a player already proving she could move the needle like no one else. It felt less like a basketball decision and more like a message from a committee, perhaps too comfortable in their positions, guarding the gates of an exclusive club. The idea that Caitlin Clark, America's biggest hoop sensation, wasn't ready. It reeked of something else. And the universe has a funny way of evening the score. Remember that WNBA All-Star game where the elite Team USA faced off against the All-Stars? Caitlin Clark was on the other side, and her side wasn't just victorious. They handed Team USA a stunning embarrassment. The player you didn't want on your team, yeah, she just beat your team. It was a clear signal, performance over politics, and the committee seemed determined to ignore it.
It looks like Jen Rosati and Dawn Staley and all those folks that Cheryl Reeve, who had a hand in Caitlin Clark not making Team USA last year in the Olympics, looks like they may be gone.
And the contrast couldn't be starker. While Clark was being told she hadn't earned it yet, a veteran, a legend in her own right, was getting what looked like a golden parachute. We're talking about the Olympics, where Diana Taurasi, by the transcript's account, seemed to be on cruise control. Games where she barely played or contributed minimal stats. A gold medal for what looked like a retirement tour while the future of the game was shut out. It felt less like tradition and more like favoritism. A rigged game where legacy trumped impact, getting a free pass while generational talent gets blocked. That's a narrative that didn't sit well with anyone paying attention, and it only amplified the questions around that committee's true motives.
The committee that included Dawn Staley, Jennifer Rosati, Dan Padover, Bethany Donovan, Greg Sankey. I do not think this committee is going to have the power that they had, because Sue Bird is taking over as managing director of USA Basketball.
But power shifts, and the same committee that seemed so determined to control the narrative, that guarded the door with egos instead of results, they're now watching from the sidelines. Why? Because Sue Bird just stepped into the managing director role for USA Basketball. And here's the twist. While much of the WNBA world seemed to be lining up to take shots at Clark for being too popular, too visible, too different, Sue Bird was one of the few voices who actually stood up for her. Publicly, unapologetically, the committee bet against the biggest name and the sport bet back. Their power, seemingly absolute, dissolved when faced with the sheer force of Clark's impact. And the one person who didn't sell Clark out? She's now the one calling the shots. Not the old guard, not the backroom sisterhood. Sue Bird holds the pen now, and the script has completely flipped.
Diana Taurasi should have been on just based off.
Diana Taurasi literally contributed nothing to that squad. Won a gold medal. There was games she got a DNP, folks. She didn't even play one game. In 2 other games, she literally contributed nothing. Nothing, like an assist. In one game, she had 2 points. It was ridiculous.
Now, let's talk about the team she joined, the Indiana Fever. Before Clark, let's be honest, they weren't exactly dominating headlines. They were perhaps seen as a team needing a significant spark, a punchline, some might say, struggling to find consistent relevance in a league desperate for mainstream attention. But almost overnight, everything changed. With Clark's arrival, the Fever didn't just get a player, they got a phenomenon. Attendance soared, viewership records that stood for decades were shattered. Suddenly, this wasn't just a team, it was the team everyone was talking about, the focal point of the entire league's conversation. She didn't just join a franchise, she dragged it into the national spotlight, back to relevance in her very first year. It wasn't built on handouts or legacy, it was built on undeniable impact, and the league watched, stunned by the sudden explosion of interest.
Japan, holding up the Caitlin Clark sign. Team USA looked at that gentleman and said, $, $. These people over there in Japan, these people over there in South Korea, they're not paying for Team USA to come and watch hoop, but they'll pay for Caitlin Clark.
But it's not just Clark anymore. The Fever got serious this offseason. They added pieces that don't just complement Clark, they amplify the noise and the talent. We're talking players like Sophie Cunningham, who brings fire, shooting, and an edge that changes the team's personality. And Lexi Hull, a hustler, a tenacious defender, someone who makes the tough plays that win games. This isn't just adding talent, it's building a narrative, a potentially polarizing one. With these additions and the existing core like the dominant Aaliyah Boston in the middle, the veteran presence of Dana Bonner and Natasha Howard, you have a lineup that has sparked conversation, debate, and frankly, discomfort in some corners. The Exciting Whites, as some have dubbed them, a label reflecting the cultural dynamics now openly discussed around this team. It's a nickname that highlights the shift in visibility and the underlying tension simmering in the league. But beyond the label, these are players who can seriously hoop. This trio, along with the rest of the squad, is building something designed to cause major problems for opponents. A team that demands attention on and off the court.
But I'm just telling the Indiana Fever have a championship team, and based on how the WNBA and professional sports are operated, it is in the best interest of the WNBA for the Indiana Fever to make the championship and perhaps win the championship. That will put the WNBA over the top.
And this new lineup changes everything on the court. Opposing teams can't guard Clark the way they might have before. You can't just face guard her or double team her relentlessly like defenses sometimes tried in college. Why? Because if you do, you leave lethal shooters open. Dana Bonner hitting threes, Natasha Howard expanding her range, Aaliyah Boston adding the long ball to her arsenal, Kelsey Mitchell's consistent explosive threat from anywhere, and yes, Clark still draining them from impossible distances when defenses give her an inch. The floor is now wide open, creating spacing that simply wasn't there before. We saw a stunning glimpse of this against the Brazilian national team in preseason, a game that shattered attendance and viewership records even though it was a blowout. The Fever shot lights out in that exhibition, hitting over 45% from three against the national squad. That wasn't a fluke, that was a clear, undeniable demonstration. A demonstration that this team has shooters at virtually every position. Try to stop Clark with overwhelming defensive attention, and someone else is gonna make you pay instantly. This isn't last season's defense they're facing. This is a tactical nightmare in the making.
All of those games, every time the Indiana Fever is on national television, they will be playing against another team in the WNBA. So with that, more storylines are going to develop. People are going to be exposed to more players, not only this Indiana Fever team, but whatever team they are going up against.
So what does this all mean for the league? It means the Indiana Fever, driven by Clark and this new dynamic roster, are a ratings goldmine, a must-see event every time they step onto the court. It's now confirmed, an unprecedented 41 out of their 44 games will be broadcast on national television. That's unimaginable exposure, not just for the Fever, but crucially for their opponents. Every game is a national event, creating new rivalries, showcasing more talent across the league, and bringing the WNBA into millions of homes. We've already seen the undeniable proof, 3.3 million viewers for a game against Chicago last June, standing as the most watched WNBA game across any platform in 23 years.
What the Indiana Fever have pulled off this offseason, and it starts with the Exciting Whites. Holy moly. This is a championship team that they put together around Caitlin Clark.
Nearly 3 million tuned in for the Connecticut Sun matchup, the highest rated WNBA game in ESPN history. And remember those games on ION, a channel many hadn't even heard of before? 7 games with over 1 million viewers, and all of them featured the Indiana Fever. This isn't just popularity, it's an economic force changing the WNBA's bottom line and proving the massive untapped potential for growth. And let's be honest, in professional sports, especially where narratives and viewership drive everything, the league has a vested interest in seeing their biggest draw succeed wildly. A deep playoff run, maybe even a championship for this Fever team. That wouldn't just be a sports story, it would send viewership through the roof and change the perception of the league forever. This isn't just a team, it's potentially a ratings monster built for a championship run, and the league is counting on it.
The Indiana Fever break attendance and viewership records in their preseason game against the Brazilian national team. So what does this mean for the WNBA as a whole, and can they finally become a profitable league this season?
From being left off a seemingly elite team by a committee that misjudged her impact, to leading a revolution that's changing the WNBA's visibility and financial future, Caitlin Clark's story is far from over. She exposed a system, survived the backlash that came with her sudden fame, and is now backed by a team built not just to compete, but arguably built to dominate and spark conversation every step of the way. Whether you love the narrative unfolding or find parts of it uncomfortable, one thing is undeniable: you're watching, because something unprecedented is happening in women's basketball. This isn't just basketball anymore. It's a cultural collision happening on the hardwood in high definition, and the ones who tried to keep her out are now watching her rewrite the entire damn script. Get ready, the game is changing, the power has shifted, and the Fever are at the epicenter of it all. What happens next could redefine the sport forever.